All right.
No, I agree.
Get worked up. Come
So
on,
the
what do you
budget
got?
news cycle refused to move on, with the Prime Minister becoming teary last week as he told a speech to the Victorian Labor Party's conference that federal government had thrown everything at increasing housing supply and lifting home ownership rates needed to be done.
By everything, he means nothing.
No, pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
He said Australian taxpayers were a partner in every investment property due to generous tax breaks, while young people continue to miss out on buying their first home. Of course, most of the proposed budget changes have absolutely nothing to do with property, with Albanese and his arse-degree holding treasurer replacing the 50% CGT deduction on all assets with a ham-fisted inflation-based model underpinned by a 30% floor. And negative gearing will be limited to investments in new properties. The AFR appears to be listening to us, knowing that rather than being a budget that supports aspiration, the biggest winners are naturally wealthy older voters who keep virtually all their tax advantages. Let me just list a few of the advantages the older people still keep in this so-called intergenerational fixing budget. So retirees have long structured their financial affairs to enable them to qualify for an age pension to get access to lucrative pensioner concession card. This provides discounted doctor visits, medication, utility bills, and they're now even exempt from the 30% GST floor. Bear in mind, 63% of Australians over 67 get the pension. So it's not like it's a few people. It's the majority of old people get it. Super remains the greatest rort of all time, and I actually didn't realise just how much of a rort super was.
They've changed the nature of super with this budget. Tell you
it's
rort,
got even rortier.
and I'll tell you how I think people need to use self-managed super in a different way as a result of this budget. But go on with your rorts.
I didn't realise that CGT and super's like 0% if you're effectively retired. So you pay zero CGT.
So we should be precise about this. So if you're in what's called pension phase, which means you're drawing money out of super.
Retirement phase, yeah.
Yeah, it's called pension phase. That's just the name of what it is in the
versus accumulation phase, which is where you're putting money in super.
And so there's a minimum that you need to draw out each year. And the amount that you draw out is tax-free, and the gains made inside super during the pension phase are tax-free as well, notwithstanding, this $3 million and $10 million caps.
I don't mind the drawing out, because drawing out is kind of realistic, but it's more the earning that's the problem. Like the fact that you can earn in super versus earning out of super, and super's tax-free.
But you should think about this in terms of drawing out. I agree with you, there's not an issue with it being tax-free, but everyone else who earns income has to report it on their income tax return and pay tax on it. But the money that you take out, it's treated like a bank account, which would be fine if it was a bank account, but it's not. It's an investment account that you are paying no tax, no capital gains tax on, and then also drawing out tax-free. So there is no tax.
Yeah. So it's under like 2 million. There's the threshold. Thresholds are pretty high. Thresholds are pretty high. And bear in mind, your primary residence doesn't count. So, and remember we talked about that 63% of people on the pension. If you got a $20 million house, that's ignored. It's called ignored for the means testing. So you can own this like a crazy expensive house and still get the pension that young people are paying for out of their 47% GST.
Yes. Well, you want me to tell you why self-managed super has changed?
Yes, please.
So that remains the only very tax-advantaged way to achieve capital gains. And so whereas, there's a what's it called? Not a single purpose test, but it's something, it's got a name like that, which means sole purpose test, exactly. The purpose of superannuation has to be only for the accumulation of retirement savings for whoever the trustee of the super fund is, the beneficiary. And so in the past, the assets in super were pretty conservative, and there's limits to what you can actually put in super.
Couldn't use about buy property, for
That's
example.
right. But now you can take loans in super to do all sorts of things. And so the nature of these changes means if you want to I'm not advocating this, by the way, but I just want to be blunt about unintended consequences. If you want to make...
Was it unintended? Apparently, Paul Keating came up with these changes and Mr. Super himself. So it may have been intended.
Well, if you want to go... Well, I doubt this was intended. If you want to go and invest in riskier assets that are more likely to generate higher growth, but also might lose your money, the only logical place left to make that investment is inside super. Because any asset that grows substantially over a period will be taxed at a higher rate of tax than a poorly performing asset. And so super all of a sudden has a totally changed risk profile because of these tax changes. It's pretty absurd, really.
But look, if you look at all these, and obviously the primary residence exemption remains, the negative gearing remains if you own the assets, which of course you have to be old to own the assets already. And people get their CGT value grandfathered. So if I own a business worth $1 billion as of next year, I'll get that $1 billion. So every single thing has been tilted. Even like we already had the most unfair tax system you could imagine for older people. Well, I thought you could imagine, and they just made it worse. And funny enough, obviously been pretty active on LinkedIn those last couple of weeks. Pretty much the only people who seem to be supporting these changes are rusted on Labor types, fair enough, they're going to support anything Labor says, and old wealthy white men. They're the only people who seem to be supporting this change.
Well, I'm not sure the colour of their skin is. I mean, I'm sure if there were old wealthy Indians or Chinese,
but none of these people seem like, I think maybe,
well, they might not be exposed
because they understand
to your
aspiration.
No,
I think these old wealthy white men have made millions of dollars, like just sucking off the taxpayer teat, like a lot of them are. They've been ex-politicians, ex-Labor advisors, like an ex-minister. It's like half the ex-Labor Party washed up hacks who get paid by the government have spent their time commenting on my LinkedIn posts. Not a single young female founder's commenting on this misogynist policy that Chalmers has brought in.
Well, people don't understand that every aggressive... I saw a back and forth that you had on LinkedIn with a post that you posted this week.
Yeah.
And the guy came off really second best. And what he doesn't realise is that is your energy drink. So let me tell you a couple, instead of just ranting about this, because there is a lot to rant about, and then I'm very open to your criticism of my article.
What's coming?
I look forward to arguing with you on that. But let me tell you, I thought you'd be interested in some OECD facts.
Yeah.
What is Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development?
30 countries in there now?
I think it might be 35 of 35 developed. I don't know if you can say developed anymore. I'm going to say developed.
Yeah.
Developed economies. So here are some facts about that. Before I tell you that, let me explain. I'll explain in a second. So here's a fact. So when you look at the share of total tax that is contributed by income tax on wages in the OECD, roughly what ballpark percentage do you think it is?
Across, if you average that out, everybody.
Average it out. What percentage of the tax take?
35%.
It's like low 20s, okay?
That low?
23, 24.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And now some of these countries have separate social security taxes.
Yeah, add 15% for the US.
But most countries don't have state taxes. The US has state taxes depending on the state, right?
Yeah.
And so it's average low 20s, low to mid 20s. What do you think Australia is at? What share of our tax take is from income tax? Australia.
Oh, so I misunderstood the question.
The first one was the OECD average.
So I thought you were asking what average tax rate do people pay?
No, well, that's a more complicated question. But what if you took at the total tax pool?
Yeah.
How much does income tax contribute? On average, it's in the low to mid 20s of the OECD.
Is it like 40 to 50?
Yeah, it's like 40s. And so basically, I think it's like 24 versus 42 or something like that.
GST in there or GST?
Well, I'll talk to you about that separately in a second. So
we put CGT in there?
CGT is not income tax. And so we are much more reliant on taxing people when they earn their wages as a percentage of the total tax take versus
which is getting worse every year because Jim Chalmers refused to index the brackets.
Indexing, right? Yeah. We'll get to that. And so now, the average full-time salary in Australia is a full-time wage. It's a bit misleading, but it's a full-time adult wage is about $100K for an individual. The top tax bracket in Australia kicks in at $190K. That idea of 1.9 times the mean, it's not the median, it's the mean salary. That is very, very low. Like the US kicks in at 10 times.
500,000, right?
Yeah, Singapore's 1 million Singapore dollars, like 14 times the average salary. Like even New Zealand, which has a lower tax rate, I think their top tax rate is 39,
CGT.
And no CGT. They kick in at 2.6 times the average wage. So we kick in really low. Now we talk about the consumption tax, which we call GST. So confusing, these three acronyms.
CGT
They got
and
to
GST are very
change
similar.
some letters here, right? So the GST, that's our consumption tax. What do you think the average rate of consumption tax is in the OECD?
About 10%, I would have thought.
So it's 19.3%.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's higher.
And we are at 10%.
Yeah.
And you can see the game that's going on here. Basically, nobody wants to raise the GST because then everyone hates you.
Yeah.
To Howard's credit, he took the GST
Unbelievable.
to an election as an incumbent.
Yeah.
You can't. So what I've worked out is you can't take tax to an election from the opposition, but you can take it as an incumbent. That's what makes Elbow even more egregious.
Do what Elbow and Chalmers just lie about it.
Yes, that makes
times.
it more egregious because they're doing it from incumbency.
What makes it so egregious is the fact they expressly said they would not do it and then 6 months later did it. That's just disgusting. And they always plan on doing it.
So I don't think they always plan on doing it. I think what happened is that the Liberal Party lost Albury seat to One Nation, and they basically woke up and said, there's no opposition in this country. If ever we're going to do something, now is the time. When they say we thought about it 3 weeks ago, I think they're telling the truth about that. I think they just thought, we've always kind of wanted to do this, but we weren't planning on it. But my God, like, there's no Liberal coalition in this country anymore. We can do it now. No one's going to listen to them. So I think what's happening is no one wants to lift the GST. And what probably has to happen in this country, if we were honest about it, is the GST needs to go up. Payroll tax needs to go at the state level, and income taxes need to come down. And CGT does not need to be touched, but with negative...
Well, CGT should be 0%, really, like it is in Singapore and New Zealand.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but like we don't have to have that debate.
It certainly shouldn't be 30% like somebody wrote in the AFR this week.
Well, let's argue about that. Let me tell you one other thing before you criticise me.
I think you got Stockholm syndrome.
All right, thank you.
Paddy Hearst, I'm doing a podcast
whenever
with.
I'm wondering what is wrong with me psychologically, you're not the first person I think of to go to. So let me just tell you something else that that I think is going to become quite topical, and that is the following. So 35% of capital gains tax in Australia is paid by 1% of transactions. So there's a bit of a theme I think that exists, which is whatever the government has forecast that it is going to collect from these new taxes, it will be collecting much less than that because people will rearrange their tax affairs and not pay the tax.
People just won't sell, they'll just borrow off their holdings.
And so do you know there's this thing called the Laffer curve, which I think is going to become quite popular in discourse, which is, you know what this curve is?
Made famous sales.
It's for cigarette sales. But it's a broader.
Wasn't it made famous by Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good bit of trivia.
Who was the Ben? What's his name? Who was the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
It's before my time.
Win Ben someone's money.
Coxon.
It was before my time, so I'm not sure.
You ever watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
I have seen the movie.
Well, let's just get off the back road and back onto the main road. And so basically this curve essentially is the relationship between increasing taxation and demand.
Also the decrease.
And taxes
it's trickle down.
Let me just start again. It's the relationship between increasing tax and tax collections.
Yeah.
And so there's all these complicated graphs, but really you could draw it as an inverted U, let's call it, where you increase taxes and your tax take goes up, but you pass this point and suddenly you collect less tax. That is what's currently happening in the UK. So tax collection as a result of all of these taxes on
the non-dom rules,
wealthy, but is going down. And so almost...
happened in France, they reversed it.
That's right. Almost certainly this increase in capital gains tax is going to result in reduced collections. That is what happened with cigarettes. They put the tax up so much that people now buy illegal cigarettes and the tax take has plummeted.
The irony about that,
plummeted.
Everybody knows that's a disaster. And it wasn't Labor's fault. Like, that's been, every government keeps increasing it because it was an easy win.
Because you say, oh, I'm doing it for health reasons.
Yeah. And eventually, like, Labor just happened to be in power when it trickled over that to your Laffer curve point. But instead of just reducing the excise on tobacco, which they should have done 2 years ago and could have significantly actually increased revenue and also stopped bombings, they, for some reason, haven't and are targeting like young female founders. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, well, you're going to criticise me after I say this, but because I'll say this and then you can criticise. So there's a war going on inside the Labor Party at the moment between, we can call it the Cha-Cha War. It's between Chalmers and you know who the other one
Andrew
is?
Charlton.
Andrew Charlton. Now, Andrew Charlton, he's a winner. This guy
sold Alpha Beta for $50 million, right?
And so he's taken a ton of money. I reckon he's got somewhere between $50 and $100 million. I was going to say he's involved in business. He's involved in consulting, so an adjacency to business, right?
Business.
He's like to build a business.
No, so totally. Real business.
This guy almost certainly got shares for zero because founder shares, no cost base.
Yeah, of course.
So this wouldn't be good for him.
No.
So when he says, like, I support this and some of my asset sales in the past would have been better under this system, it's almost certainly untrue. I couldn't think of a single asset he could have sold.
He's actually been pretty, relative to Chalmers, he's been pretty good.
Except his interview with Sky News was just one bit of dishonesty after the next, right? But basically it's pretty clear he wants to be treasurer. He's actually qualified, which might be...
Couldn't be any worse than the current guy.
Well, it could be a disadvantage to be qualified. There's a Yes Minister episode where basically the Prime Minister, I think he's just a minister at that stage, does this whole dissertation of why not being an expert is a huge advantage in being a minister. It's a great scene. But I think that you see Charlton now going on some shows, doing the rounds. He can explain it better. He had inadvertently lobbied against the government's trust changes without realising. Also, he was asked about, do you have trusts? Of course, I have family trusts. Do you do it to reduce tax? No, I do it for 112 other reasons, not to reduce tax. I think he should have just been honest and said, of course I do it to reduce tax because there's loopholes to reduce tax. We're closing the loopholes that I used because they shouldn't be there. Instead, he tries to lie about it. If he didn't do it to reduce tax, he's a complete moron, and he's not that, right? So I think that's an interesting battle to watch play out, and I'm not sure Chalmers makes it to the next election.
Look at Jim Chalmers 6 months ago. He was a pretty dependable, middle of the road. He's not going to be too controversial, and now he's turning into a raging communist in the space of 6 months. Like, what else happened to this guy?
Yeah.
Like, it's just. Then you've got Daniel Petrie and Paul Keating chiming in. So you got Paul Keating, that geriatric old fool who was a great prime minister, but now has completely lost the plot.
By the way, I don't think he's an old fool. I think he's still sharp from what I hear about him.
Oh, I think he's lost the plot.
But his views his views are stuck in a time where he can hold on to the narrative that says, I was the greatest thing that ever happened to Australia.
And he did some great things as Treasurer. This is the most un-Keating-like policy ever, even though he's reportedly behind a lot of it, but now he's just geriatric. Like, the Keating of 1987 is not releasing this policy at all. Like,
I agree with you on
his capital gain, everybody's going, they're just reverting to my capital gain. This isn't Keating's capital gains tax at all. There's no averaging. There's a 30% minimum. It's a completely different tax.
You should say there's no averaging because you introduced me to this. I didn't realise.
Well, you introduced me to this originally.
Did I?
And I introduced you. Yeah, you told me about we spoke about this 2 weeks ago. You were first on the scene with this.
Well, I think I understood like the mathematical implications.
Inherently.
But then you said what they actually, that's right. I introduced you to the concept of it shafts people that had been on a low income and suddenly they get a gain in 1 year and they don't get the benefit of, they're not really high income earners.
Splitting it,
they're just 1 year they were high. And then I went back after you pointed it out and looked and I saw that what the Keating version of this did was if you buy something for $20 and you sell it for $100 and you have an $80 gain, that's a terrible number. If you buy something for $120 and if you buy something for $20, you sell it for $120, you have a $100 gain, you would take 20% of that gain, put it on your tax and work out what tax rate you'd pay on that and then apply that to the entire gain. And that's a version of averaging it over 5 years.
Yeah,
not perfect, but simple.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have any of that in it.
They don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They just didn't think about it. They rushed it out in 3 weeks. But you got Keating, who, great treasurer, now 83-year-old, like, he sold his business for $40 million in 2024, paid a discounted amount of tax, gets all these government, he gets $1 million a year of government taxpayer funded stuff. And this is the guy who's waiting in on that young people should be forced to pay double GST. Like, it's just outrageous, the hypocrisy. Then you got Daniel Petrie, a guy who...
You're very worked up about Daniel, but I like him. And also I'm not
talking about him personally.
I'm going to tell you something at the end of this that I think you'll agree with. But you're piling on him, and I mean he did come out and make some comments.
But the audacity to come out.
Joe Aston piled on him today. Did you see that?
I'm saving that because you get
who else piled
a piece
on?
Of
Rear
caviar,
Window piled on to him.
Caviar,
Everyone's it's a pile on. It's a pile on.
Well, this guy came out and abused people for doing exactly what he's done for 20 years. His Canva carry is hundreds of millions of dollars that will be grandfathered in under this discounted capital gains rate.
Canva carry is part of Airtree, you mean?
Because Airtree invests in Canva and for a low valuation. Now it's worth $60 billion. He'll make a fortune, this guy.
But I do want to say one thing about him and others like him. In a way, they can't say anything, and maybe they shouldn't.
Of course he shouldn't.
But the thing is this, if he says it's unfair, then people will say, yeah, of course you think it's unfair because like you're all this rich guy and you want to make more money on cheap tax. And if he says it's fair, then people like you come out and say, yeah, of course you got the benefit of it, blah, blah. So he kind of can't win no matter what he says.
I think the problem with it...
Steve Baxter piled on him as well. He had a bit of a fun back and forth on LinkedIn. That's a fair fight. Two gorillas. Like you let them fight,
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, I was just Steve. I think Steve won that on points.
Well,
I
think it was, that's just like... differences in position wrapped in some aggression, basically.
The outrageousness of this whole thing and of Keating and Petrie's views is we all think something should be done about this intergenerational inequality. But what Labor's done has made it worse, not better. So to come on, simply because you're a Labor guy and you love Labor, to simply just support this policy. Like we've voted Labor as much as we've voted Liberal over the last 20 years. Not as if we're rusted on Labor haters at all.
Yeah.
But what's happened is they've lied to us and created a policy that's simply terrible for young people across the board. That's the problem with it.
So tell me, now you can move from criticising them to
being incredible for old people.
Criticise me.
Oh, so you came up. So I opened the Financial Review. My favourite journalist, Adir Shiffman.
You loaded the Financial Review.
I get the hard copy.
You
paper.
opened the paper. Was it in print?
Oh, actually, I don't know. I'm making that up.
I think it was. I assumed it probably was, but I didn't check.
Yeah, I presume it was. Yeah. But I was actually also. I think it was. I was in Maldives at the time actually, so I would have been online. But I think Adir's going to come to the rescue of these young founders. What do I read?
Which I did.
30% capital gains tax you want them to pay.
Well, did I want them to pay it?
Well, it sounded like you did.
Okay, so we can summarize in one line and say, I think that there's a bad problem for people that build businesses in that this CGT change is being sold as they are inflation adjusting the gain, but they're not. They're inflation adjusting the cost base. So even if you buy something that has a cost base and then you sell it and they adjust the cost base, what that means is they're saying it's like you bought it this morning and sold it this afternoon. Okay, if I did that, I'd be happy to pay higher tax, but what about the last 10 years? And so the way you inflation adjust a gain is you inflation adjust the sale price. And that stops a whole lot of problems. I thought, as we have discussed, the bigger the gain, the higher the tax rate you pay. Totally. I thought that was a bug. It turns out it's a feature. That's what Treasury wanted. Presumably because they're all bad at investing would be my guess.
Well, none of them had a business.
It's so crazy. Anyway.
Jenny Wilkinson, Jim Chalmers, Anthony Albanese have never worked a day in their life in the private sector. They're all three taxpayer-funded
I'm with you.
leeches. So of course they don't know how to write policy.
And so basically I said the problem is when they index the base, it's very bad for people who build businesses, but it shouldn't be limited to tech bros who get all of the airtime.
Yeah, totally.
It should also be a hairdresser, a florist, or whoever else.
Yeah.
These all are.
I hate limiting to tech. It's outrageous.
We have the same view on this. So far we're aligned.
Yeah.
And this is where we deviate.
Yeah.
You want to do a version of war that is, I'm going to fight. It's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. That's your attitude to life, which I generally agree with, okay? But you would rather die in glory on the battlefield than take an injury but live to fight another day. And so what I mean by that is there is a chance that Albo will completely flip on the CGT because he completely flipped on the Royal Commission. The reason he completely
flipped on the last bunch of super changes.
That's right. The reason he flipped on the Royal Commission is because athletes came out against him and he did not want to be disliked by athletes. That's my view of it, okay? And so the question is, can someone come out on this that makes him feel as disliked and as that? I don't know. I give it a 10% chance. 10%. And so you want to fight and die on 10%.
No, I also want to fight at the election. Like, let him take this to an election so people who love this election, love this policy, are rusted on
who are you going to vote for in the
Labour
election? When you want to fight it in the election, who are you going to vote? No, I don't even mean you. No, who are you counting on to win the election against Labor?
Well, the hope is not Labor.
Exists.
Well, the coalition will be One Nation and Liberal Party by the looks of it.
Okay, so your hope. So my view was, I think they're going to pass this. Let's not make it completely disastrous. Let's give them an easy change they can agree to that is politically palatable, that will shave off the sharpest of the edges. And I wrote, I don't know if you read the whole article. Presumably you did.
I was too much in fury that I ripped up the paper and left.
We should keep opposing the whole thing because the whole thing's terrible. But if we're only going to get one thing, this is the thing to
I think we should be reducing CGT is the point. Like it should be 15% max, like every other country.
All right. Well, what's your chances of getting that with this government?
Not with this government.
Zero.
But I think we vote out this government is the point.
Well, now we come back to this point. What's your dream? Your dream is, I'm going to go and fight on the battlefield in the hope that One Nation becomes the next leader of Australia. Is that your pitch? I don't feel like that's a good pitch.
I think the problem is, like, you accept 30% and you're kind of given something incrementally. People aren't that bothered by it, and Labor wins the next election with this deceitful, fraudulent policy.
So I don't think this is what I think is going to happen as a result of these changes if they go through. Australia has 1.1% GDP growth at the moment. It's going backwards in real terms. It's going to go backwards further. Inflation is 5%. There's increased spending. I'm not sure it will stay at 5%, but it ain't going to 3%, is my guess. Unemployment's just gone up. Property prices are going to go down. And and rent is going to go up. And so what I suspect is going to happen in 2 years' time at election time is there'll be a massive cost of living crisis with people not finding places to rent and possibly a recession. What do you give the odds of recession in 2 years?
Well, we drew a recession anyway.
So 30% plus chance
they'll
of
quickly
recession.
drop into
Interest rates are not going up anymore.
The question is what happens with inflation, because inflation's crazy high. Even forgetting Iran, it was about 3%.
You have to say, in fairness, a chunk of inflation is not the fault of this government. It is due to geopolitical problems.
Forget who you blame.
No, you say forget who you blame now because you can't blame them. But what I'm saying is...
I do blame them, but I'm just not
but that is not,
taking in that discussion.
The Iran war is not
But
them.
it was 3.3 underlying.
Correct.
Before the war.
Correct.
It's now like 6%. Like forget
It's
that.
5%.
Yeah, well, whatever it is. That's before it's really come through.
Before this stuff comes
No,
through.
3.3 was 3.35% headline was pre-war. War's about to just make it even higher.
All right.
And then 3.3 excludes the fuel costs and all that kind of stuff. So RBA, which was jawboned by the government, Jim Chalmers jawboned the ABA to drop rates 3 times. So it's 100% it's Jim Chalmers' fault, the economic dunce. So, like, we know whose fault it is. Like, and you also blame Frydenberg and Morrison for their ridiculous spending during COVID. So they're not
All right. Leave the past
blameless.
in the past. Let's move
But
forward.
you just said you blame them. They're telling you who's blame.
I'm not sure the last 2 prime ministers we have of this country are in like the top quintile of just overall intelligence of Australians, right? That's one of the challenges.
Morrison's more cunning, I think. I think Elba...
Wasn't a great prime ministership, as
he's a
you've
shocking
said
prime,
many
he's
times.
a shocking prime minister,
Yeah,
but
it
it
wasn't great.
Dan Andrews is like super cunning as well. He was a very so like this political success and intelligence are completely uncorrelated.
So I think this government is going to get, if they get rolled at the next election, it won't be because people are angry about these tax changes, because I go to cafes and talk to people in the cafes about what they think. And do you know what most people think? I don't think it's going to make things any better for me. It sounds like it's hurting rich people a bit, and they move on. So
I think
most people don't care.
it doesn't. The people it impacts are massively impacted, and they also. If you look at people impacted, it's young founders mostly, and they're the ones who are creating jobs for other young people.
They're a minority of young people. So what I mean is,
No, but these are people who are all left Liberal Party, who are naturally at home in Liberal Party and vote. And I'll put myself in this category. Our viewers, I can't vote for Scott Morrison, robo-debt guy. I can't vote for Peter Dutton, the anti-immigration guy. Labor are much better on social policy, and I can kind of trust them economically to not do anything really stupid.
I see what you mean.
And I think there's literally millions of people who did this, and now we're completely double-crossed and defrauded and lied to. I never would have voted for a government that was going to increase capital gains.
Do you know the number one political issue for the electorate, especially, it's all about 25 to 35. Do you know the number one issue?
Housing.
It's all cost of living.
Yeah.
It's all about cost of living. And so I think
this doesn't make it better for them.
I
That's the
agree
point.
with you, but my only point is this. I don't think these specific tax changes are going to make any difference in the votes of 25 to 35, but I do think cost of living in a recession will make a difference. And so I think we're on track
think
for
they
that
both will.
as a consequence
Yeah.
of this. And then the question is, like, who do you vote for? That's a whole other conversation. But like, the reason that I came out and tried to do something is, and I don't want to go into too much detail on this, but like the behind the scenes conversation on this, because, you know, there are people on the Labor right that don't have much power at the moment, but they're very opposed to this.
The Miles's and even Charlton.
And it goes deeper than that, right? Yeah, absolutely. And so they want simple...
Wasn't Chalmers on the right? I think he is, technically.
Well, I think,
used to be till his communist
I think
policy just released.
Doesn't he have to be because of the way the Labor Party does their factional stuff? I actually don't know. But like what I do know is they look for changes that are simple and will make things less bad. And so that was the motivation. I think you should keep fighting. I'm right behind you. Like most of the stuff I write is just completely against a terrible system. Answer this question for me. So negative gearing, when the government says they've done everything for housing and we say they've done nothing, what we mean is they haven't increased supply, they haven't made it cheaper to build with
they haven't made the
lots
hard
of red tape,
decisions.
they haven't reduced the debt that the government can, that banks can give for buying property, which pushes up prices. But negative gearing, you would say, has a distortionary effect on price, right? You've said that forever.
Yep. I don't like negative gearing, don't get me wrong.
And so one of the distortionary effects it has is that when you sell a house, traditionally, you got a 50% discount on the gain.
Yeah.
But when you use negative gearing to offset your tax, you get 100% benefit of the loss. And that's a mismatch. That's a numerical mismatch, because if that loss was quarantined inside the gain, you really only get the benefit of half of it, but you get the benefit of all of it on your tax. No one talks about that. And so and so I like evolution, not revolution, because revolution, there's blood in the streets, okay? And you don't know where the revolution is going to go. And so I don't understand why this wasn't the policy. For the next 5 years, we're reducing the percentage of the loss you can claim from 100% by 10% a year until it gets down to 50%, and it's going to be on all properties, all properties. No one is going to get grandfathered, and that will genuinely provide a gradual release of the bubble in property. And like, it's actually much fairer not to grow. Like, why is that not the plan?
Because they're too stupid.
Well, do you think that it's an intelligence issue?
Absolutely, it's an intelligence issue.
Matt, you might be. I just don't know the answer. That's why
But
I
also
want to
it's-
get. That's why I want to get like Charlton on the podcast.
But yeah, like, he can't be honest though. He can completely agree with us, but he can't go against cabinet's view. Like,
Well, we can say, why didn't you do this?
the most frustrating thing is like if you're going to tackle intergenerational inequality, do it properly. Like here's your chance.
I agree.
Put some tax on the primary residence, not 50%, put a little bit of tax on the primary residence, get rid of negative gearing completely, not the grandfather garbage they're doing, and actually make it fair so older people don't have these and get rid of the super thing. Like there's so many things they could have done that actually would have been brave, harsh moves that maybe you or I may not have liked as in terms of personally, but were the right thing to do. This is the wrong thing to do, and it targets the wrong people. It targets the young, not the old.
The last thing I want to say about why I think we're going to end up in a recession potentially, from what I've been told by the smartest economist I think I've met in Australia, 15% of this country's turnover, like economic activity, in some way connects to property transactions, if you add it all up. People that have a primary residence, they hold for 15 years. People that have an investment property hold for about half. The majority of turnover is coming from
Investments.
Residential investments being turned over. No one is turning those over now. In fact, I think the opposite will happen, depending on what the actual legislation looks like. At the moment, it looks like there's a loophole where you can turn your primary residence into an investment property and claim negative gearing on it.
Yeah.
And so I think the lack of turnover, like if you want to go and short stuff now, go short every real estate agent, every mortgage broker, maybe the banks, although they're very diversified, but they've already been smashed. Like I think that people underestimate the impact of a reduction in property transactions.
You know who
has on the
gets smashed?
Australian
You know who gets
economy.
smashed more than anything there?
Yeah, go on.
Our bankrupt Victorian government, who's dependent on stamp duty
That's a great
keep the
point.
lights on, which are barely on
That's a
as we
great
speak.
point. But you know what's another $10 billion of lost money to a Victorian government? So that's why I wrote that article. I get your point. We should keep fighting the good fight, but I suspect there's a 90% chance that the worst parts of this will not be changed. Again, I just think they could have also said, we're going to change capital gains tax discounts so that you get a 10% discount every year for 5 years until it gets to 50%. We'll encourage people for holding assets for longer.
Yeah,
that will
totally.
take care of
Easy.
everyone.
Yeah, easy.
Everyone,
Yeah.
but house flippers are going to pay more. And I mean, there are so many easy solutions. People say, well, it's a complex problem. Doesn't mean it's got a complex solution.
Or you could just go 0 or 15% like every other country does. It's not exactly complex.
It's really crazy.